A waitress stops a mafia boss from touching a cupcake left on his table. Inside, a name that shatters him, his son, the child he buried 6 months ago. What she shows him next proves the funeral was a lie, and the man he trusted most has been hiding his boy all along. The rain hammered against the windows of Sal's diner like bullets against steel. It was 2:47 a.m., and the place was nearly empty except for a drunk couple in the corner booth and a trucker nursing his 5th coffee at the counter. Adriano Valente sat in his usual spot, the back booth with a clear view of both exits. His knuckles were still red from the meeting an hour ago. The negotiation hadn't gone as planned. Blood had been spilled. Not his, but close enough to make him feel the weight of every one of his 43 years. He loosened his tie and let out a breath that felt like it had been trapped in his chest for days. That's when he noticed it. A cupcake. It sat in the center of his table, perfectly placed on a white napkin. Vanilla cake with bright blue icing, topped with a single unlit candle. The kind of thing a kid would get excited about.
Adriano frowned.
He hadn't ordered anything. His men always swept the booth before he arrived. Nothing was supposed to be here. He reached out to push it aside. Wait, don't touch that. The voice was quiet but urgent. Adriano's hand froze midair. His eyes snapped up to see Camila, the night shift waitress, standing 3 feet away. Her face was pale, her hands trembling slightly as she gripped her order pad. Nobody told Adriano Valente what to do. Not anymore. Not for 20 years.
His jaw tightened.
Excuse me? Camila swallowed hard. She knew who he was. Everyone in this part of Brooklyn knew who he was. The man who controlled the docks. The man whose name made grown men look at their shoes. I'm sorry, Mr. Valente, she whispered, glancing nervously at his 2 bodyguards seated at a nearby table. But a woman left that here about 10 minutes ago. She ran out right after. She looked scared. Adriano's eyes narrowed. What woman? I don't know. Never seen her before. Tall, maybe mid-30s, wearing a dark hoodie. She came in, put that on your table, and left without saying a word. His mind was already working through possibilities. A threat? A bomb? Some kind of sick joke from a rival family. But then he looked closer at the cupcake. There was writing on it. His blood turned to ice. Written in elegant white icing across the blue frosting was a single name, Luca. The diner seemed to tilt. The sound of rain faded into a dull roar in his ears. Adriano stared at those 5 letters like they were written in fire.
Luca.
His son's name. The son he'd buried 6 months ago. Mr. Valente? Camila's voice sounded like it was coming from underwater. Are you okay? He wasn't okay. He would never be okay again. The funeral had been small, private, just family and a handful of trusted associates. The casket had been closed. The fire had been too severe. The warehouse explosion on the pier. Luca had been in the wrong place at the wrong time, caught in the crossfire of a territorial dispute Adriano had been trying to settle. 7 years old, bright eyes, loved dinosaurs and baseball.
Gone.
The medical examiner said the body was burned beyond recognition. DNA fragments and a melted toy car were all they'd recovered. Adriano had held that twisted piece of plastic in his hands for hours, unable to process that this was all that remained of his boy. His ex-wife, Marta, had screamed at him at the funeral, blamed him, said Luca's blood was on his hands for dragging their son into his world. She'd been right. After that day, she'd disappeared, changed her number, moved somewhere he couldn't find her. Adriano had burned that warehouse to the ground. He'd made sure everyone remotely connected to that explosion paid with their lives. But revenge hadn't brought Luca back. Nothing could. And now this. A cupcake, with his dead son's name on it. Who else saw this woman? Adriano's voice was low and dangerous. Camila hesitated. Just me. And maybe Danny, the cook, but he was in the back. Security cameras? We have one by the register and one covering the parking lot.
Adriano sotoed abruptly.
His bodyguards, Marco and Tony, instantly rose to their feet, hands moving toward concealed weapons. The footage, Adriano said quietly to Camila. Show me.
Now.
Camila nodded quickly and led him behind the counter, through the kitchen, and into a cramped office that smelled like grease and old coffee. A small monitor showed 4 grainy camera feeds. She rewound the footage, her fingers shaking on the controls.
There. 2:34 a.m.
A woman entered the frame, tall and lean, wearing a black hoodie pulled low over her face. But what made Adriano's heart stop wasn't the woman. It was what she was carrying. A small backpack, blue with red straps, with dinosaur patches sewn onto it. Luca's backpack, the one Marta had bought him for his 7th birthday, 2 weeks before he died. On the screen, the woman approached Adriano's booth, empty at the time, and carefully placed the cupcake on the table. She looked around once, then hurried out the front door. Rewind it, Adriano commanded. Zoom in on her face. Camila tried, but the camera quality was too poor. The woman's features remained hidden in shadow. The parking lot camera, he said. Camila switched feeds. The woman appeared again, walking quickly toward a dark sedan. Before she got in, she paused and looked directly at the camera. For just 1 second, her hood fell back. Adriano leaned closer to the screen, his pulse pounding in his temples. He didn't recognize her, but what he saw in her hand made his world crack apart. She was holding something up to the camera, a photograph. Even through the grainy footage, Adriano could see it clearly.
A boy.
Dark hair.
Smiling. Luca.
But not Luca as he'd been 6 months ago. This photo looked recent. The boy was wearing a red jacket Adriano had never seen before. His hair was longer. He looked healthy.
Alive.
The woman held the photo up for exactly 5 seconds, then got in her car and drove away. Adriano stumbled backward, his hand gripping the edge of the desk. Mr. Valente? Camila's voice was gentle. Careful. I think your son might be alive. The words hung in the air like smoke.
Alive. Impossible.
He'd seen the DNA report. He'd held the remains. He'd watched them lower the casket into the ground. But he'd also spent 6 months with a hole in his chest that nothing could fill. A nagging feeling that something was wrong, that the pieces didn't fit. The body had been too destroyed to identify visually. They'd rushed the DNA analysis. The medical examiner had been a man in his organization's pocket. What if? If someone inside your circle wanted to take him, Camila said quietly, this is how they'd do it. Make you think he was dead. Make everyone think he was dead. Then they'd have complete control. Adriano turned to look at her. Really look at her. She wasn't just a waitress. The way she'd analyzed the situation, the way she'd connected the dots. Who are you? He asked. Camila met his eyes. Someone who knows what it's like to lose everything. And someone who thinks you deserve to know the truth. She reached into her apron pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. She handed it to him. Adriano unfolded it with trembling hands. It was a printed photograph. High resolution. Time-stamped 2 weeks ago.
Luca.
Sitting on a bench in a park Adriano didn't recognize. Eating ice cream. Looking up at someone off camera with that same crooked smile that used to light up Adriano's entire world. His son was alive. And someone had taken him. The photograph burned in Adriano's pocket as he stood under the black umbrella, rain mixing with tears he refused to acknowledge. 6 months ago. March 15th. The worst day of his life. The cemetery stretched out in every direction, filled with stone angels and forgotten names. Luca's grave was in the family plot, next to Adriano's father and grandfather. 3 generations of Valentes, bound by blood and violence. Now a 4th. A child who'd never had the chance to choose a different path. The casket was so small. That's what haunted Adriano most. How could something so tiny hold everything that mattered? Father DeLuca read from his Bible, words about eternal rest and God's mercy, but Adriano heard none of it. He stared at the polished wood, at the brass handles that would never be touched by his son's small hands again. The fire was catastrophic. Detective Morrison had told him 3 days after the explosion. The warehouse was filled with chemicals, accelerants. When it went up, the temperature reached over 2,000 degrees.
I'm sorry, Adriano.
There wasn't much left. They'd shown him evidence bags, bone fragments, a melted lump that used to be Luca's favorite toy, a red Corvette. And somehow, impossibly, they'd extracted enough DNA to confirm it was his son. "We're certain," the medical examiner Dr. Russo had said, not meeting Adriano's eyes. "The markers match. I'm so sorry for your loss." Adriano had accepted it because he'd had no choice. Because questioning it meant admitting he'd failed to protect his own child. Because the alternative, that Luca was suffering somewhere, scared and alone, was too unbearable to consider. Marta stood on the opposite side of the grave, her sister's arm around her shoulders. She wore all black, her face hidden behind a veil, but Adriano could feel her hatred radiating across the open earth. She'd begged him, 3 years ago when they divorced. "Get out of this life," she'd pleaded. "For Luca. For us. We can disappear. Start over somewhere safe." But Adriano had been born into this world. His father had ruled the Brooklyn docks before him. His grandfather before that. The Valente name meant something. It commanded respect, fear, power. He told himself he could keep them separate, his family life and his business. He'd been wrong. The priest finished his prayer. People began filing past the casket, dropping roses onto the polished wood. Adriano's underboss, Rocco Vieri, squeezed his shoulder. "We got them all, boss," Rocco whispered. "Every single person connected to that warehouse. They paid. Luca's death has been avenged." Rocco had been Adriano's right-hand man for 15 years. His most trusted soldier. Luca's godfather. He'd been the one to identify the body, or what remained of it. He'd held Adriano when he collapsed after seeing the DNA report. "It doesn't bring him back," Adriano had said, his voice hollow.
No.
"But it's justice. Justice." The word tasted like ash. As the mourners dispersed, Marta finally approached. She lifted her veil, and Adriano saw the destruction in her eyes. She looked 10 years older. Broken. "This is your fault," she said, her voice steady despite the tears streaming down her face. "You killed him. Not the fire. Not your enemies.
You.
Your pride. Your empire. Your goddamn legacy." "Marta?" "He asked about you every day," her voice cracked. "Every single day. When is Daddy coming? Why can't Daddy live with us? Does Daddy still love me?" And I lied. I told him you were busy. That you loved him. That you'd come soon. Adriano felt something breaking inside his chest. I did love him.
Ido.
"Love isn't enough," Marta screamed. "Love doesn't stop bullets. It doesn't put out fires. It doesn't bring back dead children." She stepped closer, her finger jabbing into his chest. "I hope you remember this feeling. I hope it haunts you every single day. Because this is what you chose. This empire over your son." She turned and walked away, and Adriano knew he'd never see her again. He was right. She vanished that same week. Changed her name. Disconnected her phone. His people tried to track her down, but she disappeared like smoke. Standing there now in the rain, watching the groundskeepers lower the casket, Adriano had felt something he'd never experienced before. Absolute powerlessness. All his money, all his soldiers, all his influence meant nothing. He couldn't negotiate with death. He couldn't threaten it. He couldn't make it fear the Valente name. Rocco had stayed until the end, standing beside him in silence. "Something feels wrong," Adriano had said quietly as the first shovel of dirt hit the casket. "What do you mean?" "The way it happened. The timing. Luca wasn't supposed to be anywhere near that warehouse." "Kids wander," Rocco said gently. You know how he was. Curious. Adventurous. He probably saw something interesting and… No, Adriano shook his head. Marta was careful. She never let him out of her sight. And that warehouse was 5 miles from her apartment. How did he get there? Rocco had paused, then put his hand on Adriano's shoulder. Sometimes there are no answers, brother. Sometimes terrible things just happen. You'll drive yourself crazy looking for logic in tragedy. But the doubt had planted itself in Adriano's mind like a seed. The DNA report had been rushed. Dr. Russo had seemed nervous. Detective Morrison had closed the case within 48 hours, unusual for something involving a Volante. And Luca's toy car, the one piece of evidence that seemed most personal, why had it survived when everything else burned to nothing? Adriano had pushed these thoughts down, buried them alongside his son, because entertaining them meant facing an even darker possibility. That someone close to him had orchestrated this. That someone he trusted had stolen his child and made him believe he was dead. Now, standing in Camila's office, staring at a photograph time-stamped 2 weeks ago, those buried doubts erupted like a volcano. His son was alive. And someone was going to pay. The parking lot behind Sal's diner was empty except for a rusted dumpster and Camila's beat-up Honda Civic. The rain had slowed to a drizzle, but the air still smelled like wet asphalt and old garbage. Adriano stood with his back to the brick wall, Marco and Tony flanking him like stone statues. They'd been with him for 8 years, loyal as dogs, but right now he trusted no one. Camila stepped out the back door, pulling her jacket tight against the cold. She glanced nervously at the bodyguards. "They stay," Adriano said before she could ask. "Talk." She nodded, reaching into her pocket. "I need to show you something first. But you need to understand. I'm risking my life doing this." "Why would you risk anything for me?"
You don't know me.
Camila's eyes met his. "Because 3 years ago, someone took my daughter. The police said she ran away. Said she was troubled. But I knew better. I spent everything I had hiring investigators, following leads. By the time I found her, she'd been sold to a trafficking ring operating out of Newark." Adriano's jaw tightened. He knew about the Newark operation. Had intentionally stayed out of it because trafficking was a line he wouldn't cross. "I got her back," Camila continued. "Barely. But I learned something. The people who take children, they're ghosts. They operate in shadows. They're protected by people in power. And the only way to fight them is to recognize the signs." She pulled out her phone and opened a folder. "After that woman left the cupcake, something fell off. So I checked our security footage from the past week." She handed him the phone. This was taken 3 days ago.
3:47 a.m.
Adriano watched the grainy footage. The same parking lot. A different car. A black SUV with tinted windows. A man stepped out, wearing an expensive suit that looked wrong for this neighborhood. He walked to the diner's back door, looked around, then taped something to it before driving away. "I found this the next morning." Camila pulled an envelope from her other pocket. "I should have thrown it away. Should have called the cops. But something told me to wait." She handed it to Adriano. His name was written on the front in typed letters. Inside was a USB drive and a handwritten note. "The funeral was a lie. Your son is in a cage. Trust no one in your circle." Adriano's hands shook. "You've had this for 3 days? I didn't know if it was real. I thought maybe it was someone trying to set you up. But then tonight, when that woman came with the cupcake," Camila took a shaky breath. "I put the drive in my laptop. There's a video. You need to see it." "Show me." Camila pulled out a tablet from her bag. She'd already loaded the video. She pressed play. The screen showed a small room, concrete walls, a single barred window. A boy sat on a cot, knees pulled to his chest.
Luca.
Older than in the funeral photos. His hair was longer, touching his shoulders. He wore clothes Adriano didn't recognize, gray sweatpants and a plain white t-shirt. But it was him. The way he bit his lower lip when he was thinking. the small scar above his right eyebrow from when he fell off his bike at age 5. The video had no sound, but Adriano could see his son's lips moving, talking to himself, or maybe praying. Then a door opened off camera. Luca's head snapped up, and his face transformed into pure terror. He scrambled backward on the cot, pressing himself against the wall. A hand appeared, placing a tray of food on the floor. The door closed. Luca waited a full minute before creeping forward to grab the tray. The video ended. 37 seconds total. 37 seconds that destroyed everything Adriano thought he knew. "There's more," Camila said quietly. She pulled out a stack of printed documents. "I used to be a licensed private investigator before everything with my daughter. I still have access to certain databases." She spread the papers on the hood of her car. "Financial records, bank transfers, property deeds. I started digging into the people close to you. Most came up clean. But one name kept appearing in strange places." She pointed to a highlighted section. "Rocco Vieri, your second in command." Adriano felt his blood turn to ice.
No.
"Rocco's been with me since before Luca was born." "I know." "Which makes him perfect." Camila's finger traced a line of transactions. 2 days before the warehouse fire, Vieri transferred $2 million from a shell company to an offshore account in Montenegro. The shell company is registered to a business called New Beginnings Youth Services. What is that? On paper, a charitable organization that helps at-risk youth. In reality, she pulled up another document. It's a front. The facility is registered as a private rehabilitation center, but there's no staff listed, no licensing, nothing. It's a ghost facility. You think Luca's there? I think someone with a lot of money is keeping children somewhere isolated. And I think Rocco Vieri paid for it. Adriano's mind raced. Rocco, his brother in everything but blood. The man who'd stood beside him at his wedding. Who'd held Luca when he was born. Who'd cried at the funeral.
Why?
Why would he do this? Camila pulled out one more document, a newspaper article from 20 years ago. Because of this, the headline read, "Valente Underboss's son killed in gang crossfire."
Adriano remembered.
Rocco's boy, Antonio, had been 16, caught in a shootout between the Valentes and a rival family. Adriano had been leading that operation. The boy had been in the wrong place at the wrong time. "Rocco forgave you," Adriano said. "He said it wasn't my fault." Maybe he lied. Camila's voice was gentle. Or maybe forgiveness has limits. You lost your son for 6 months. He lost his forever. An eye for an eye. Adriano felt the world tilting. Every conversation with Rocco since the funeral. Every consolation. Every promise of justice. All lies. "There's something else," Camila said. "The woman who delivered the cupcake? I ran her plates through the system. The car was rented using a credit card registered to Marta Valente." Adriano's head snapped up. "My ex-wife. I think she knows Luca's alive. I think someone's been sending her proof. And tonight, she finally decided you needed to know the truth." Thunder rumbled in the distance. Adriano looked at the documents, at the video still frozen on Camila's tablet showing his terrified son. Someone had orchestrated everything. The explosion, the body, the DNA report, the funeral. They'd made him bury an empty casket while they held his child prisoner. And his most trusted friend was behind it all. "Where's Vieri now?" Adriano's voice was deadly calm. "I don't know, but we need to be careful. If he knows you're looking." "I don't care." Adriano grabbed the documents. "Find Marta. I need to talk to her. Tonight." Camila nodded. And then Adriano looked at the frozen image of his son, backed against a wall, terrified. "Then I'm going to Montenegro. And I'm bringing my boy home." Marta's apartment was in Queens, a modest 2-bedroom in a building that had seen better days. Adriano had found the address through old property records. It was under her sister's name, a detail Marta thought would keep her hidden. It was 4:30 a.m. when Adriano's fist pounded on the door. "Marta, open up. I know you're in there." Silence. Then the sound of a chain lock sliding. The door opened 6 inches, and Marta's face appeared in the gap. She looked thinner than he remembered, with dark circles under her eyes that spoke of sleepless nights. When she saw him, something flickered across her face, not fear, but resignation. "I wondered when you'd come," she said quietly. "Let me in. Your goon's staying outside. They're in the car. This is between us." Marta studied him for a long moment, then opened the door. The apartment was sparse, basic furniture, no pictures on the walls, nothing personal. A place for existing, not living. She moved to the kitchen and poured herself a glass of water with shaking hands. "How did you find me?" "That doesn't matter." Adriano pulled the cupcake from a bag. He'd kept it, though the icing had started to smear. He placed it on the kitchen counter. "You sent someone to Sal's diner tonight."
Why?
Marta stared at the cupcake, at Luca's name written in blue icing. Tears welled in her eyes. "Because I couldn't live with it anymore. Because every day I knew and didn't tell you, I was just as guilty as them." "Knew what?"
Adriano stepped closer.
"Say it." "That our son is alive." The words came out as a broken whisper. "That I've known for months. That I've been getting photos, videos, proof that he's breathing and thinking of us, and asking why we abandoned him." Adriano's fist slammed on the counter, making her jump. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because they said they'd kill him." Marta screamed back, years of suppressed anguish erupting. "They said if I told anyone, police, you, anyone, they'd make him disappear for real. That I'd never find his body. That he'd just vanish like he never existed." She crumpled against the refrigerator, sliding to the floor. Adriano stood frozen, watching his ex-wife fall apart. "Start from the beginning," he said, his voice softer now. "Tell me everything." Marta wiped her eyes and nodded. She stood, went to the bedroom, and returned with a shoebox. Inside were dozens of printed emails, photographs, and a small tape recorder. "It started 2 weeks before the funeral," she began, sitting at the small kitchen table. "I got an email from an anonymous account. No name, just a string of numbers. The subject line said, 'Your son is alive.'" She handed him a printed email. The message was brief. "Luca wasn't in the warehouse. He's safe. He's being cared for. If you want him to stay that way, you will attend the funeral. You will grieve. You will never speak of this to Adriano Valente or the authorities. Further instructions will follow." "I thought it was a sick joke," Marta continued. "Some psychopath trying to torture me. But then they sent this." She showed him a photo. Luca, holding that day's newspaper. The date was clear, March 12th, 3 days before the funeral. They kept sending proof. Every few weeks. Photos of him in different clothes. Videos of him sleeping. Audio recordings. She picked up the tape recorder with trembling hands. "This came last week." She pressed play. Static, then a child's voice. "Mommy?
Daddy?
I don't understand why you're not coming to get me. The man says you're busy, but it's been so long. I'm trying to be brave like Daddy taught me, but I'm scared. Please come find me. Please. I love you." The recording ended. Adriano's vision blurred with rage and grief. "The last message came the day before the funeral," Marta said. "It was a warning. They said if I told you the truth at the cemetery, Luca would be killed immediately. They said they had people watching. That they'd know if I said anything. So you played along. What choice did I have?" Marta's voice cracked. "They murdered our son, or made us think they did. They had that kind of power. That kind of reach. How could I risk Luca's life?" Adriano forced himself to think clearly. Did they ever demand ransom?
No.
That's what doesn't make sense. They never asked for money. Never made demands. They just kept sending proof that he was alive and telling me to stay silent. Until tonight. Marta nodded. "Tonight I got a different message. It said, 'Your window is closing. If you want to see your son again, tell Adriano the truth. Give him the cupcake. He'll know what to do.'" Who delivered it? A woman. I never saw her face. She left the cupcake at my door with instructions to take it to Sal's diner during your usual visit. Adriano's mind worked through the angles. Someone wanted him to know. But why now? Why after 6 months of maintaining the lie?
There's more, Marta said.
She pulled out the most recent email, dated yesterday. They sent coordinates. Montenegro. And this message. Adriano read it aloud. Rocco Vieri took your son to build a new legacy. He believes the Valente Empire corrupted you. He's raising Luca to be what you should have been, a leader without your weaknesses. The facility is called Novak House. You have 1 week before they move him somewhere you'll never find. Come alone or he dies. The name hit Adriano like a physical blow. Rocco. The man he'd trusted with his life. The man who'd held him at the funeral and promised justice. He killed Antonio, Adriano said quietly.
Reconnaissant.
20 years ago, caught in crossfire during one of my operations. I remember, Marta whispered. He told me he forgave me, that he understood it was part of the life. That accidents happen, Adriano laughed bitterly. But he never forgave me. He just waited.
Planned.
And when the opportunity came, he took the thing I loved most. What are you going to do? Adriano looked at the photos of his son scattered across the table.
Luca smiling. Luca scared.
Luca asking why his parents abandoned him. I'm going to Montenegro, he said. I'm going to find this Novak house. And I'm going to bring our son home. They said come alone. I don't take orders from kidnappers. Marta grabbed his arm. Adriano, please.
Think.
Rocco isn't stupid.
He knows you.
He's planned this for years. If you walk into a trap, then I die trying to save my son. Adriano's voice was steel. I already buried him once, Marta. I won't do it again. She stared at him, then slowly nodded. Then I'm coming with you.
No.
He's my son too. And maybe if he sees both of us, he'll know we never stopped loving him. Adriano wanted to argue, but he saw the determination in her eyes. The same fierce protectiveness that had made him fall in love with her 15 years ago. Okay, he said finally. But we do this my way. And if things go wrong, you run. You save yourself. Understood? Marta didn't answer. She just gathered the photos of Luca and held them to her chest. Outside, the sun was beginning to rise over Queens, painting the sky in shades of gold and red. Somewhere across the ocean, their son was waiting. Camila sat across from Adriano in the back room of a restaurant he owned in Little Italy. The morning light filtered through dusty windows, illuminating stacks of financial documents spread across the table like a paper maze. She'd been working nonstop for 6 hours, her private investigator instincts kicking into overdrive. Coffee cups littered the table, and her eyes were bloodshot, but her focus was laser-sharp. Your organization keeps better records than most corporations, she said, highlighting another section with a yellow marker. That's going to help us. Adriano leaned back in his chair, watching her work. Marco stood by the door, and Tony had been sent to gather more files from Adriano's accountant, a nervous man who'd been roused from bed at 5 a.m. with threats that ensured his cooperation. Walk me through it again, Adriano said. Camila spread out 3 separate documents. Okay. 2 months before Luca's supposed death, Rocco Vieri established a shell company called New Beginnings Youth Services. He used a lawyer in the Cayman Islands to hide his involvement, but money always leaves a trail. She pointed to a bank statement. The company received an initial investment of $5 million from another shell company. This one registered to someone named Victor Novak in Montenegro. I know that name. Adriano's jaw tightened. Novak runs a private security firm in Eastern Europe. Former Soviet military. His operation is legitimate on the surface, but word is he facilitates extractions and relocations for people who need to disappear.
Exactly.
Now look at this. Camila pulled up another document. 2 days before the warehouse fire, before Luca supposedly died, Rocco transferred $2 million to Novak's personal account. The memo line says consulting services. Consulting services, Adriano repeated flatly. For $2 million. It gets worse. I pulled financial records for Dr. Russo, the medical examiner, who confirmed the DNA results. She slid another paper across the table. 3 days after signing Luca's death certificate, Russo deposited $50,000 in cash into his personal account.
No explanation.
Just cash. Adriano's hands clenched into fists. He was paid to lie. And look at this, Camila's finger traced a line of transactions. Detective Morrison, the one who closed the investigation in 48 hours, his son's college tuition was suddenly paid in full 2 weeks after the funeral. Anonymous donor. Full ride to Colombia. That's $80,000 a year. The picture was becoming horrifyingly clear. Rocco hadn't just stolen Luca. He'd orchestrated an elaborate conspiracy, buying off everyone who could expose the truth. How many people were in on this? Adriano asked quietly. At least 5 that I can confirm. The medical examiner, the detective, probably someone at the DNA lab, and whoever helped stage the warehouse fire to make it look legitimate. Camila paused. But the money all flows back to one source. Rocco Vieri. Adriano stood and walked to the window, looking out at the empty street. I made him my second-in-command because I trusted him completely. After Antonio died, I tried to make it right. I paid for the funeral, set up a fund for Rocco's wife, gave him a bigger cut of everything. Guilt money, Camila said softly. I thought we were past it. 20 years, and never once did he show signs of resentment. He was at my wedding. He held Luca when he was born. Adriano's voice cracked. He was family, which is why he could get close enough to do this. Tony burst through the door, carrying a laptop and several folders. Boss, you need to see this. Your accountant found something. He set up the laptop and opened a spreadsheet. This is Rocco's personal account, the one he thinks nobody else can access. There's a pattern of payments. Monthly transfers of $15,000 to the Novak facility in Montenegro. They started 7 months ago, and they're still ongoing. He's paying to keep Luca there, Adriano said. Yeah, but look at the most recent notes, Tony zoomed in. Last week's payment has a memo. Final phase preparation. Transport scheduled. Camila leaned forward. Transport? They're moving him. When?
Adriano demande.
Tony clicked through more files. There's a flight manifest here. Private jet from Podgorica, Montenegro to Sao Paulo, Brazil. Departure date is 6 days from now.
Brazil.
Marta's voice came from the doorway. She'd arrived while they were working, and now she stood there looking pale. Why Brazil? Because there's no extradition treaty, Camila explained. If they move Luca to Brazil and establish new identities, you'll never find him. He'll disappear into a country of 200 million people. The room fell silent. We have 6 days, Adriano said finally. Tony, I need you to book flights to Montenegro. For tickets, me, Marta, Camila, and Marco. Boss, with all respect, we should bring more men. If Rocco's there.
No.
Too many people and we'll be spotted before we get close. We go in quiet, Adriano turned to Camila. You said you found the facility's location? She nodded and pulled up a satellite image on her tablet. Novak House. It's in the mountains about 40 miles outside Podgorica, officially registered as a private rehabilitation center for troubled youth. But look at the security. The aerial view showed a compound surrounded by high walls, guard towers at each corner, and a single access road. It looked more like a prison than a youth facility. How many kids are in there? Marta asked, her voice shaking. Records show 12 residents. All boys between ages 6 and 16. Camila zoomed in on the building layout. But here's the interesting part. They're not orphans or troubled kids. Every single one is the child of someone powerful. Mob bosses, politicians, cartel leaders. Adriano felt ice in his veins. Rocco's collecting them. It looks that way. I think he's building something. An organization of children raised away from their corrupt parents. Kids who'll be loyal to him, not their families. A new generation, Marta whispered. He's trying to create something pure from our broken world. Adriano thought about Antonio, Rocco's son. The boy had been bright, Idealistic, wanted to be a lawyer. He'd hated the family business and begged his father to leave it. Then he died in an alley at 16, shot 3 times because he'd been walking home from the library at the wrong time. He thinks he's saving them, Adriano said. He thinks he's giving them the life Antonio never got, by kidnapping them and making their parents think they're dead? Marta's voice rose. That's not salvation, that's torture. To Rocco, it makes perfect sense. Camila closed her tablet. In his mind, he's protecting these children from becoming what their parents are. He's giving them a chance to be something better. I don't care about his philosophy, Adriano said coldly. I care about getting my son back. Camila, can you get us blueprints of that facility? I can try. But Adriano, you need to understand something. She met his eyes. Rocco has been planning this for years. He knows you. He knows how you think, how you operate. Walking into that compound is exactly what he expects. Then I'll give him what he expects. Adriano's voice was ice. And when he's comfortable, when he thinks he's won, I'll take everything from him the way he took everything from me. Tony cleared his throat. Boss, there's one more thing. I've been monitoring Rocco's phone. He's still in New York. I called someone in Montenegro this morning and said he's flying out tomorrow night.
He's going to be there, Marta said.
When we arrive, he'll be waiting.
Adriano nodded slowly. Good.
I want him to see me coming. I want him to know that his plan failed. And I want him to watch as I walk out of there with my son. He looked at each person in the room. Tony, Marco, Camila, Marta. This isn't going to be clean. Rocco won't give up easily. People might get hurt. If anyone wants out, say so now. No one spoke. Then we leave tonight, Adriano said. Montenegro is 9 hours ahead. We'll arrive tomorrow afternoon, scope the facility, and make our move after dark. Camila began gathering the documents. I'll compile everything we need. Financial records, facility layouts, local contacts. As everyone moved into action, Marta touched Adriano's arm. What if Luca doesn't remember us? What if 6 months in that place changed him? Adriano thought of the video. His son cowering against a wall. The fear in his eyes. Then we remind him, he said quietly. We remind him every day until he believes it. We're his parents, Marta. That doesn't change. She nodded, blinking back tears. Outside, the city was waking up. People heading to work, living normal lives, unaware that somewhere across the ocean, a little boy was counting the days until someone came to save him. They moved on Rocco's penthouse at midnight. Adriano had spent the day making calls, coordinating flights, and assembling equipment. But before leaving for Montenegro, he needed answers. He needed to look Rocco in the eye and hear him confess. The penthouse was in Tribeca, a glass tower with a doorman who conveniently took his break when Adriano's crew arrived. Marco had the security codes. He'd helped install them 3 years ago. Everything about Rocco's life had been built on Adriano's trust. That ended tonight. They took the elevator to the 23rd floor. Adriano, Marco, and Tony, all armed. Camila had stayed behind with Marta, working on Montenegro logistics. This was family business. The elevator doors opened to a private hallway. Rocco's door was at the end, solid oak with a biometric lock. Marco, Adriano said quietly. Marco pulled out a small device and attached it to the lock panel. 15 seconds later, the door clicked open. They entered in formation, weapons drawn. The penthouse was dark except for ambient city light filtering through floor-to-ceiling windows. Modern furniture, expensive art on the walls, a wet bar in the corner. Everything immaculate and untouched. Too untouched. Boss, Tony whispered, pointing to the coffee table. Papers were scattered across it, some half-burned in an ashtray. Adriano moved closer and saw financial documents, property deeds, all relating to the Montenegro facility. But they'd been burned just enough to be unreadable. He knew we were coming, Marco said, sweeping the room with his weapon. Adriano moved to the desk and found more evidence of hasty destruction. A shredder overflowing with paper strips. An open safe, empty. Then he saw it. A A single sheet of paper, pristine and untouched, placed deliberately on the keyboard. The message was written in Rocco's handwriting. You should have been a father instead of a king. You chose power over family. I'm giving Luca what you never could, a chance to be clean, to be good, to be everything Antonio should have been. You'll never find him now. Adriano's hands shook as he read it. The betrayal was complete, but what cut deeper was the truth in those words. He had chosen the business. He had put empire before family. Boss, we need to go, Marco urged. This feels wrong. As if on cue, the window behind them exploded. Glass shattered inward as gunfire erupted from the building across the street. Adriano dove behind the couch as bullets tore through furniture and walls. Marco returned fire, but they were pinned down. Sniper. Tony yelled, crawling toward the hallway. 2 positions. East and west buildings. Another window shattered. Adriano felt a bullet pass inches from his head. This wasn't a warning. This was an execution. He set us up. Marco shouted over the gunfire. He knew exactly when we'd come. Adriano's mind raced. Rocco had left the note as bait, knowing Adriano would come here first. Knowing his anger would make him sloppy. The hallway.
Adriano comande.
Move. They scrambled toward the door as bullets chewed up the walls behind them. Tony made it first, then Marco. Adriano was halfway there when he heard a crash from the kitchen. 2 men in tactical gear burst through the service entrance. Not cops, private security. Probably Novak's people. Marco took down one with 2 shots. The second returned fire, and Tony went down, grabbing his shoulder.
I'm okay.
Tony gasped. Flesh wound. But they were trapped. Snipers blocking the windows, armed men at the service entrance, and God knew how many more on the way. Adriano saw an exit strategy. The bedroom. Fire escape. They dragged Tony down the hallway as more gunfire erupted. The bedroom was untouched, and sure enough, a window led to an external fire escape. Marco kicked it open and cold night air rushed in. They could hear sirens in the distance. Someone had called the cops. Go, Adriano ordered. Marco went first, helping Tony through the window. Adriano provided cover, firing twice toward the hallway to keep the tactical team back. As he climbed through the window, he looked back at the penthouse one last time. Rocco's message still sat on the desk, mocking him. They descended the fire escape 3 floors before jumping to an adjacent building's roof. Marco had a car waiting 2 blocks away. Always have an exit plan. They made it to the vehicle just as police cars screamed toward the tower. Marco drove calmly, blending into late-night traffic while Tony pressed a jacket against his bleeding shoulder. How bad? Adriano asked. Bullet went through. I'll live, Tony grimaced. But boss, Rocco's playing 3 moves ahead. He knew we'd come for him. He's not in New York, Adriano said, the realization hitting him. That phone call this morning, it was misdirection. He's already in Montenegro. Marco's knuckles whitened on the steering wheel. Then he's waiting for us there. With how many men? Doesn't matter. Adriano stared out the window at the city passing by. We're still going. They arrived at a safe house in Brooklyn, a modest apartment Adriano kept for emergencies. Camila and Marta were waiting, their faces pale when they saw Tony's blood. What happened? Marta demanded. Rocco knew we were coming. Adriano accepted a glass of whiskey from Camila. He cleared out his penthouse and had snipers waiting. This was a message. What message? Camila asked. That he's in control. That he's always been in control. Adriano downed the whiskey. He's had 6 months to prepare for this moment. He knows every move I'll make because he helped me plan operations for 15 years. So what do? Marta's voice cracked. If he's expecting us, then we don't give him what he expects. Adriano looked at each of them. Rocco thinks I'll come in loud. Guns blazing, revenge-driven, sloppy. He's counting on my anger, making me stupid. And you're going to prove him wrong?
Camila asked.
No. A cold smile crossed Adriano's face. I'm going to give him exactly what he expects. But while he's focused on me, someone else is going to get Luca out. He turned to Camila. You said you've infiltrated secured facilities before. When you were searching for your daughter. Camila nodded slowly. I have. But that facility in Montenegro, the security is military grade. Can you get past it? She thought for a moment. Maybe. If I had blueprints, proper equipment, and someone creating a significant distraction. The distraction will be me walking through the front door. Adriano looked at Marco and Tony. Tomorrow we fly to Montenegro. I'll make contact with Rocco, draw all his attention. While they're focused on me, Camila finds Luca and gets him out. That's suicide, Marco protested. Boss, Rocco will kill you the moment you show up. Maybe. But he'll want to talk first. He'll want me to understand why he did this. His ego won't let him just shoot me without explaining. Adriano's voice was ice. That conversation buys us time. Marta grabbed his arm.
Adriano, no.
We'll find another way. We can call the authorities, get Interpol involved. We have 6 days before they move Luca to Brazil. By the time authorities cut through red tape, he'll be gone forever. Adriano met her eyes. This is the only way. You mean you're willing to die for this? I've been dying for 6 months, Marta. Ever since I buried an empty casket. He touched her face gently. If I can trade my life for his, I will. Without hesitation. Tears streamed down her face, but she nodded. Camila stood. If we're doing this, we do it right. I need 12 hours to source equipment and study those blueprints. Marco, I'll need your help with tactical planning. You got it. As everyone moved into action, Adriano walked to the window and looked out at Brooklyn. Somewhere out there, Rocco was boarding a plane, confident his plan was working. But Rocco had made one mistake. He'd forgotten that Adriano Valente didn't become king by following rules. He became king by breaking them. The message arrived at 3 a.m., just as Adriano was reviewing maps of Montenegro for the 100th time. His phone buzzed. Unknown number. A text message with no words, just a location pin and a photo. Adriano's blood froze. The photo showed Luca sitting at a small table with a fresh cupcake in front of him. Blue icing. One candle. But this time, the candle was lit, casting shadows across his son's hollow face. Luca stared at the camera with empty eyes that had seen too much. The location pin showed coordinates for a warehouse on the Red Hook waterfront. 10 minutes away. It's a trap, Marco said, looking over Adriano's shoulder. Has to be. Of course it's a trap. Adriano was already grabbing his jacket. But I'm going anyway. Boss. Stay here. Protect Marta and Camila. If I'm not back in 2 hours, proceed with the Montenegro plan without me. Marco started to protest, but Adriano was already out the door. The warehouse district was deserted at this hour, just empty streets and the distant sound of water lapping against piers. Adriano's car pulled up to the coordinates, a massive shipping warehouse with rusted corrugated walls and broken windows. He left his gun in the car. If someone wanted him dead, they'd have killed him by now. This was about something else. The warehouse door was unlocked. Inside, the space was cavernous and dark except for a single spotlight in the center, illuminating a small table. On the table sat 3 items, a cupcake identical to the one in the photo, a child's drawing, and a sealed envelope. Adriano approached slowly, every nerve alert for danger. But the warehouse seemed empty. Just him and these objects arranged like props in a theater. He picked up the drawing first. It was crude, done in crayon, a boat on water, stick figures that might be a family, and a sun in the corner. In a child's handwriting at the bottom, I want to go home. Adriano's hands trembled. Luca had drawn this. Recently. The envelope was next. He tore it open and found a typed letter. Adriano, by now you know the truth. Your son lives. He breathes. He dreams. He asks about you every day. I could have killed him. After what you took from me, it would have been just an eye for an eye, a son for a son. But I'm not you. I don't destroy innocence. I protect it. Luca is being raised in a place free from violence, free from the corruption that defines our world. He's learning music, art, languages. He's becoming something better than either of us could have made him. You want him back? Then you need to understand what you're taking him back to. A world of blood and lies. A world that killed my Antonio and will eventually kill Luca too. I'm offering you a choice. Come to Montenegro alone. No weapons. No soldiers. Just you. Face what you've become. Face what you've lost. If you can prove to me that you've changed, that you're willing to leave this life behind, I'll consider letting you see him. But know this. Luca doesn't remember you the way you remember him. 6 months is a lifetime for a child. He's healing from the trauma of your world. Taking him back to it would be cruelty. The coordinates are in this envelope. You have 4 days. Come as a father, not as a king. Rocco. Adriano read it twice, rage building with each word. Rocco had twisted everything, made himself the hero, made Adriano the villain. But beneath the anger was something else.
Fear.
What if Rocco was right? What if Luca had forgotten him? What if 6 months of peace had erased the memory of a father who'd chosen business over bedtime stories, who'd missed soccer games for meetings, who'd taught his son to fear instead of love? A sound behind him. Footsteps. Adriano spun around to see a figure emerge from the shadows. Not Rocco, a woman. Tall, wearing the same dark hoodie from the diner's security footage. She pulled back her hood, revealing a face Adriano didn't recognize. Mid-30s, sharp features, with eyes that held a mix of pity and contempt. Who are you?
Adriano demande.
My name is Elena Novak. Victor's daughter. Her accent was Eastern European. I was instructed to deliver Rocco's message and answer one question. Choose wisely. Where in Montenegro is the facility? That's in the envelope. GPS coordinates. But that's not the question you should ask. Elena moved closer, unafraid. You should ask, what happened to the other fathers who came for their sons? Adriano felt ice in his veins. What? You're not the first, Mr. Valente. 12 boys in that facility. 9 fathers have already come. Men like you, powerful, violent, used to getting what they want. She paused. None of them left Montenegro alive. You're lying. Am I? Elena pulled out her phone and showed him photos. Different men, different nationalities, all lying dead in various locations. Brazilian cartel leader, killed in a car accident. Russian oligarch, heart attack in his hotel. Mexican gang boss, found in a ravine, ruled a hiking accident. Rocco killed them all. My father did, under Rocco's orders. The price for seeing your son is your life, Mr. Valente. Rocco believes these children deserve better fathers. If the originals won't step aside willingly, he removes them permanently. Adriano's mind raced. This wasn't just kidnapping, it was systematic replacement. Rocco was eliminating the old generation to build a new one. Why are you telling me this? Elena's expression hardened. Because I didn't sign up to murder fathers. I thought we were protecting children. But this, she gestured at the photos. This is something else. These men may have been criminals, but they loved their sons. What do you want? I want out. But I can't leave without insurance. She pulled out a USB drive. This contains everything. Financial records, communication logs, video evidence of what really happens at Novak House. Proof that Rocco orchestrated all 12 kidnappings. She held it out to Adriano. Take this to the authorities. Real authorities, not the ones you own. If something happens to me, make sure it goes public. Adriano took the drive. Why help me? Because I have a daughter. 4 years old. And if someone took her from me, I'd burn the world down to get her back. Elena's voice cracked. You're going to Montenegro either way. I can see it in your eyes. So, I'm giving you a chance to survive.
How?
The facility has a weakness. A blind spot in the security system during shift changes at 11 p.m. 15-minute window. That's when deliveries come. Food, supplies, mail. She pulled out a courier uniform from a bag at her feet. Wear this. Drive the supply truck. You'll get past the gates. And then, Then you're on your own. But at least you'll be inside. She turned to leave, then stopped. Mr. Valente? Your son draws that boat every day. He tells the other boys about fishing trips you took him on, about how you taught him to tie knots, about how you promised to buy him a real boat someday. Tears burned Adriano's eyes. I remember. Then remember this too. Rocco isn't doing this for justice. He's doing it because he can't let go of Antonio. He sees his son in every boy at that facility. He's trying to save Antonio over and over again. Elena's voice was soft. But you can't save the dead. You can only destroy the living trying. She disappeared into the shadows, leaving Adriano alone with a cupcake, the drawing, and coordinates that would either reunite him with his son or lead him to his grave. He picked up the child's drawing and carefully folded it into his jacket pocket right over his heart. For days. Adriano pulled out his phone and called Camila. Change of plans. We're not waiting. We leave for Montenegro tonight. What happened? I'll explain on the plane. Just get everyone ready. And Camila. He looked at the drawing one more time. Bring everything. If we're doing this, we're doing it right. I'm bringing my son home, or I'm dying there. Understood. Adriano walked out of the warehouse into the pre-dawn darkness. Somewhere across the ocean, a little boy was drawing boats and remembering a father who'd promised to come back. That promise was about to be kept. The private jet touched down in Podgorica just after sunset. Adriano hadn't slept during the 9-hour flight. His mind kept replaying Luca's empty eyes in that photograph, the drawing of the boat, Elena's warning about the 9 dead fathers. Camila had spent the flight studying blueprints and satellite imagery. Marta sat in silence, clutching a small photo album of Luca from happier times. Marco kept his weapon cleaned and ready, while Tony nursed his wounded shoulder with painkillers and determination. Remember, Camila said as they descended the stairs onto the tarmac, Montenegro is small, but Viktor Novak has deep connections here. Police, politicians, border control assume everyone is compromised. They'd entered on false passports, identities purchased through one of Adriano's European contacts. On paper, they were American investors exploring real estate opportunities. A rental car was waiting, a nondescript sedan that wouldn't draw attention. Marco drove while Adriano studied the GPS coordinates Elena had provided. The facility was 43 miles northeast, in the Dinaric Alps foothills. The city gave way to rural landscape, rolling hills, dense forests, and scattered villages that looked frozen in time. As they climbed into the mountains, the roads became narrower, the air colder. There, Camila pointed to a dirt road barely visible through the trees. That's the access road. Half a mile up, there's a village called Kirkvice. We need to stop there first. Why? Adriano asked. Because I called ahead. There's someone who can help us. The village was tiny, maybe 20 houses, a small church, and a cafe that doubled as the town's social center. Camila led them inside where an elderly man sat alone, nursing Turkish coffee. Petter, Camila greeted him in broken Montenegrin. The old man looked up, his weathered face breaking into a cautious smile. You're the American woman who called. The one with too many questions. This is Adriano Valente. His son is being held at Novak House. Petter's expression darkened.
Ah.
Another father comes.
Seek.
We talk. They gathered around his table. Petter ordered more coffee, then spoke in accented English. I was security guard at that place. 20 years. Quit 6 months ago, when I see what it become. What did you see? Adriano leaned forward. At first, it was rehabilitation center. Real one. We help troubled boys from broken homes. Good work. Petter's hands shook as he sipped his coffee. Then Victor's daughter, Elena, bring new management. American man named Rocco. Everything changed. What changed? The boys. Before, they come by choice with families. After Rocco, they come at night.
Scared. Confused.
Some drugged. I ask questions. I'm told to mind my business. He pulled out a cigarette, lit it with trembling hands. Then I see the fathers come. 9 men, different countries, all looking for their sons. None leave alive. How did they die? Marta asked, her voice barely a whisper. Accidents, they call them. But I know. Victor's men follow them from facility. Car runs off-road. Heart attack in hotel room. Hiking fall, Petter exhaled smoke. Always accident. Always clean. Police never investigate because Victor owns police. Why did you quit?
Adriano asked.
Because of one boy. Maybe 7, 8 years old. Dark hair. He cry every night for his mama and papa. I bring him extra food. Try to comfort him. One day, Rocco sees this. He tells me, the boy's parents are dead. He needs to forget them. You're preventing his healing, but I see in Rocco's eyes. He's lying. Petter looked directly at Adriano. That boy, he draw pictures all the time. Pictures of boats. Adriano's breath caught.
Luca.
If that his name, yes. Sweet boy.
Brave.
He tried to protect younger children, even though he's scared himself. Marta covered her mouth, tears streaming. He's okay? He's healthy?
Physically, yes.
They feed them well, give them education, exercise. But his spirit, Petter shook his head. He's fading. Like light going out. He asks less and less about his parents. Soon he stopped asking at all. We're getting him out, Adriano said firmly. Tonight. Can you help us? Petter studied him for a long moment. You understand what you face? Victor has 12 armed guards.
Surveillance everywhere.
The facility built like fortress. I have a way in. A supply truck during the shift change.
Ah.
Elena tell you this, Petter nodded. She has good heart, that one. Hates what her father become. But Mr. Valente, even if you get inside, how you get out? With 12 boys. Just one boy. My son. You leave the others? Petter's voice held judgment.
Adriano hesitated.
He hadn't thought beyond saving Luca. But the image of 11 other children, all stolen from their families, all waiting for fathers who'd never come. We save them all, Marta said suddenly. Everyone turned to look at her. If we're breaking in any way, we save all of them. We give them back to their families. That's impossible, Marco protested. We barely have resources for one extraction. Then we make it possible, Marta's voice was steel. Those children have suffered because of men like us, like Rocco, like all these crime families. We don't leave them behind. Not 1 inch. Camila pulled out her tablet, showing the facility layout. It could work. If we create a big enough distraction, evacuate during the chaos. You'd need vehicles. Multiple drivers. Safe routes. Petter tapped the table, thinking. And you'd need to disable security systems, not just avoid them. Can you help with that?
Adriano asked.
I know the systems. Old ones, anyway. They may have upgraded. Petter crushed his cigarette. But I know something better. I know secret tunnel. Tunnel? From Cold War. Facility used to be military bunker. Underground passage leads from basement to forest, half-mile away. Emergency exit. Victor thinks it's sealed, but I know how to open it. Adriano felt hope spark for the first time. You'd help us do this. Those boys deserve freedom. And 9 fathers deserve justice, Petter stood. But we do this right. We plan everything. One mistake, and we all die, including the children. They spent the next 3 hours planning. Petter drew maps from memory. Camila cross-referenced with her satellite images. Marco and Tony inventoried weapons and supplies. Marta contacted a child psychologist through encrypted channels, someone who could help traumatized children. The supply truck arrives at 11 p.m., Petter said. You intercept it 5 miles from facility. Driver is local man named Dragan. He can be bribed. You take truck, drive to facility. I meet you at tunnel exit with vehicles. What about the guards?
Tony asked.
During shift change, half the guards are in break room. Other half are at posts but distracted. That's your window. 15 minutes. Not enough time to find Luca and 11 other boys, Camila calculated. Then we split up. Adriano looked at his team. Marco and Tony create distraction at main gate. Camila and I go in through delivery entrance, find the boys. Marta stays with Petter, ready with vehicles. I should come in, Marta protested.
No.
If this goes wrong, one of Luca's parents needs to survive. Adriano's voice was gentle but firm. We get him out, you're the first person he sees. He needs his mother. Marta wanted to argue, but knew he was right. Petter checked his watch. Supply truck leaves in 2 hours. You have that long to prepare. As they filed out of the cafe, the old man grabbed Adriano's arm. One more thing. Rocco, he's not at facility.
Adriano froze.
What? He left this morning. Flew to Brazil, preparing the new location. Only Victor and guards are there now. Adriano didn't know whether to feel relieved or disappointed. Part of him had wanted to face Rocco, to make him pay. But another part knew this was better. Fewer variables, better odds. He'll be back, Petter said. In 3 days, for the final transport. If you're going to do this, do it tonight, before he returns. Outside, the mountain air was crisp and cold. Stars filled the sky above the forest, beautiful and indifferent to the violence about to unfold. We're really doing this, Marta whispered. Adriano looked toward the mountains where his son waited.
Yes.
We are. In 6 hours, either they'd all be free, or they'd all be dead. There was no middle ground anymore. The supply truck rumbled up the mountain road at 10:53 p.m. Adriano sat in the driver's seat wearing a stolen delivery uniform, his heart hammering against his ribs. Camila crouched in the back among boxes of food and supplies, a tranquilizer gun hidden in her jacket. The driver, Dragan, was currently zip-tied in a ditch 5 miles back, along with 20,000 euros to ensure his silence. He'd been surprisingly cooperative once he saw the money. The facility appeared through the trees, a sprawling compound of concrete and steel, illuminated by harsh floodlights. Guard towers rose at each corner, and a 12-foot wall topped with razor wire enclosed everything. Adriano's hands tightened on the steering wheel. His son was behind those walls. Steady, Camila whispered through the radio hidden in his ear. Just like we planned. The main gate ahead. 2 guards stepped out of the booth, assault rifles slung across their backs. Adriano slowed the truck and rolled down the window, praying his rudimentary Montenegrin would pass. Delivery, he grunted, handing over forged papers. The first guard barely glanced at them. Late tonight. Traffic in Podgorica. The guard waved him through with obvious boredom. The gate opened with an electric hum. Adriano drove into the compound, following the painted line toward the loading dock. His eyes scanned everything, camera positions, guard rotations, emergency exits. 3 guards visible near the main building. 2 more on the north tower. He backed the truck up to the loading dock at exactly 11:02 p.m. Shift change had started. Through the facility's windows, he could see guards gathering in what must be the break room. This was it. He opened the back of the truck. Camila emerged, moving like a shadow. They entered through the loading bay door, unlocked, just as Petter had promised. The hallway was stark white, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. They moved quickly, following Petter's directions to the residential wing. The facility was eerily quiet except for the hum of ventilation. A guard rounded the corner ahead. Camila's tranquilizer dart caught him in the neck before he could shout. He crumpled silently. They dragged him into a supply closet. Second floor, Camila whispered. Dormitory C. They took the stairs 2 at a time. The second floor hallway was longer, with numbered doors on each side. Through small windows, Adriano could see children sleeping in small rooms, but not in cells. They looked almost like normal dormitories. Room 207. Petter had said this was Luca's room. Adriano's hand shook as he turned the doorknob. The room was small but comfortable. A bed, a desk covered in drawings, a bookshelf. And there, sleeping under a blue blanket, was his son. Luca looked so different. His hair was longer, almost touching his shoulders. His face had lost its baby roundness. But it was him. Adriano would know him anywhere. He approached the bed slowly, barely breathing. Luca, he whispered. Luca, wake up. The boy stirred, eyes fluttering open. For a moment, he looked confused. Then his eyes focused on Adriano's face. Recognition flickered. Daddy? The word broke something in Adriano's chest.
Yes.
It's me. I'm here. I'm going to take you home. Luca sat up, and Adriano saw the confusion warring with hope in his expression. But they said you were dead. Uncle Rocco said you and Mommy died in an accident. He said I had to stay here to be safe. He lied, son. We've been looking for you. We never stopped. Adriano knelt beside the bed. Your mom is waiting for you. We're going home tonight. Tears filled Luca's eyes. Really? Really? But we have to hurry. Can you be brave for me? Luca nodded, wiping his eyes. He was already getting out of bed, reaching for shoes. Camila appeared in the doorway. We have a problem. 3 more guards just arrived at the front gate. Someone must have noticed the real delivery truck didn't show up. How long do we have?
Minutes.
Maybe. Adriano looked at his son, then at Camila. Get the other boys. All of them. Wake them quietly. Adriano, we don't have time. We're not leaving them. His voice was fierce but quiet. Luca, can you help? Can you wake the other boys and tell them to get ready?
Luca nodded.
He was scared but trying to be brave, just like his father had asked. They moved quickly through the dormitory wing. 12 boys, ages 6 to 16. Most were sleeping. Some woke confused. The older ones had to be convinced this wasn't a trick. Listen to me, Adriano told them as they gathered in the hallway. Your families have been looking for you. You're going home tonight. But you have to be quiet and do exactly what we say. Understand? They nodded, a mix of hope and terror on their young faces. An alarm suddenly shrieked through the building. They know, Camila said. Go. Basement now. They ran. 12 children and 2 adults, racing downstairs as voices shouted behind them. Adriano carried a 6-year-old Brazilian boy who couldn't keep up. Luca stayed close, helping a younger child. The basement was a maze of corridors. Petter had drawn the map, but in the chaos, everything looked the same. There, Camila pointed to a rusted door marked, Authorized personnel only. Adriano kicked it open. Behind it was a narrow tunnel, exactly as Petter had described. Dark and cold, but leading to freedom. Inside. Everyone inside. The children filed in. Adriano was counting 8, 9, 10 when he heard footsteps thundering down the basement stairs. Keep going, he shouted to Camila. Get them out. He turned to face the guards just as they rounded the corner. 4 men, heavily armed. The lead guard raised his weapon. Stop. You're not authorized. A gunshot echoed. But it hadn't come from the guards. Adriano spun to see a familiar figure emerging from the shadows behind them. Rocco Vieri stood there, holding a smoking pistol. The guard who'd been about to shoot collapsed, a bullet hole in his shoulder. Lower your weapons, Rocco commanded the other guards. His voice carried absolute authority. This man and I need to talk. The guards hesitated, confused. Rocco was their employer's partner, but he'd just shot one of them. I said lower them. Rocco's voice was ice. They obeyed. Rocco looked at Adriano, and his expression was complicated, anger, grief, something that might have been respect. You actually came. You walked into the lion's den for him. He's my son. I know. Rocco's hand tightened on his gun. That's why I'm here. I told Petter to tell you I was in Brazil. I wanted to see if you'd still come. If you'd risk everything. Behind Adriano, he could hear the children moving through the tunnel. Camila's voice echoing back, urging them forward. Luca was still visible at the tunnel entrance, frozen, watching his father face down his godfather. Luca, go, Adriano said without taking his eyes off Rocco. But Daddy.
Go.
I'll be right behind you. The boy disappeared into the darkness. Rocco watched him go, something painful crossing his face. Antonio would have been 17 now.
Did you know that?
I know. I think about him every day.
Do you?
Or do you think about your empire? Your legacy? Rocco's voice cracked. I stood at my son's funeral while you gave orders to your soldiers. I heard you planning your next move before his body was even cold. I was wrong, Adriano said quietly. I was wrong about everything. I chose power over family. I chose being a king over being a father. And it cost me 6 months with my son. It cost you 17 years with yours. Pretty words. But they don't bring Antonio back. Nothing will. Just like nothing will bring back those 6 months I lost with Luca. Just like nothing will fix what you did to these children. Adriano took a step forward. But we can stop.
Right now.
We can let them go home. We can choose to be better. Rocco's gun wavered. I was saving them. From becoming us. From this life of blood and violence. By kidnapping them? By making their parents believe they were dead? That's not salvation, Rocco. That's torture. Adriano's voice was gentle now. Antonio wouldn't have wanted this. You know he wouldn't. Tears streamed down Rocco's face. I just wanted to give them what he never got. A chance to be clean. To be good. Then let them go. Let them be with their families. Let them choose their own paths. Adriano extended his hand. Please, brother. Let this end. For a long moment, Rocco stood there, gun shaking in his hand. Then he lowered it. Go, he whispered. Take them. All of them. Get them out of here. Adriano didn't wait. He turned and ran into the tunnel as shouts erupted behind him. Victor Novak had arrived. The tunnel was narrow and pitch black. Adriano ran through darkness, his hands scraping against damp stone walls, his breath echoing in the confined space. Behind him, he could hear shouting, Victor's voice bellowing orders in Montenegrin, demanding his men pursue. Then gunshots. Adriano's heart stopped. He wanted to go back to see if Rocco was okay, but he forced himself forward. The children needed him. Luca needed him. After what felt like an eternity, he saw light ahead, the tunnel exit. He emerged into cold mountain air, gasping. Petter was there with 2 vans, exactly as promised. Camila was loading the last of the children inside, doing head counts. Marco and Tony stood guard with weapons drawn. Dad. Luca's voice cut through the chaos. The boy ran to him, and Adriano swept him up in his arms, holding him so tight he was afraid he might break him. I've got you, Adriano whispered into his son's hair. I've got you. You're safe. Where's Uncle Rocco? Luca asked, his voice small. Before Adriano could answer, figures emerged from the tunnel. Not guards, just Rocco, stumbling out alone, blood staining his shoulder. Rocco. Adriano set Luca down and rushed to catch him as he collapsed. They shot me, Rocco gasped.
Victor.
He wasn't happy about my change of heart.
Marco.
First aid kit. Adriano lowered Rocco to the ground. The wound looked bad, high on the left shoulder, bleeding heavily. Rocco grabbed Adriano's jacket with surprising strength. Listen. Victor called reinforcements. 15 men coming from Podgorica. You have maybe 10 minutes. We're not leaving you. Yes, you are, Rocco coughed, blood flecking his lips. I'm done running. This is where it ends for me. Rocco. Let me finish. His grip tightened. I took your son because I was drowning in grief. Because every time I saw you with Luca, I remembered Antonio. I remembered what you took from me. I know. And I'm sorry. I'm so goddamn sorry. But you know what the worst part was? Rocco's eyes filled with tears. Watching Luca these past 6 months, I realized something. He's just like Antonio was.
Kind. Brave.
Full of light. And I was doing to him exactly what this life did to my son. I was stealing his childhood, his innocence, his chance to just be a kid. From the tunnel came the sound of approaching footsteps. Victor's men were coming. Boss, we need to go. Tony urged. Now. But Rocco wasn't done. He pulled Adriano close, his voice barely a whisper. You asked me once how Antonio would have wanted to be remembered. Not as a martyr. Not as a cautionary tale. just as a boy who liked books and wanted to be a lawyer and made his father laugh. I remember. Then remember this too. Luca's not your legacy. He's not your second chance. He's not a symbol of anything. Rocco's voice was fierce despite his weakening state. He's just a boy. Let him be just a boy. Footsteps echoed louder in the tunnel. Voices shouting in Montenegrin. 30 seconds, maybe less. I forgive you, Adriano said suddenly. For everything. For taking Luca. For the 6 months of hell. For all of it. I forgive you. Rocco's face crumpled. I don't deserve it. Neither do I. But maybe that's the point. Adriano looked back at Luca, standing by the van with the other children, watching with wide eyes. Maybe we don't get what we deserve. We get what we choose. Then choose better than I did. Rocco pushed him away.
Go.
Be the father I never got to be. Adriano stood, every instinct screaming at him to stay, to fight, to not leave his oldest friend bleeding in the forest. But Luca was calling for him. Daddy, please. We have to go. The first of Victor's guards emerged from the tunnel. Marco grabbed Adriano's arm. Boss, it's over. He made his choice. Adriano looked at Rocco one last time. His friend nodded, a sad smile on his face, then turned to face the guards emerging behind him. I'll hold them off, Rocco called out. Give you time. Now go. Adriano ran. He scooped up Luca and dove into the first van as Marco floored the accelerator. Tony and Camila were in the second van with the other children. Both vehicles roared down the dirt road as gunfire erupted behind them. Through the rear window, Adriano watched Rocco stand, drawing a weapon from his jacket. He fired at the pursuing guards, forcing them to take cover. Then the forest swallowed the scene, and Rocco was gone. Is Uncle Rocco going to be okay? Luca asked, his small hand gripping Adriano's shirt. Adriano didn't know how to answer. How do you tell a 7-year-old that someone they loved was dying to save them? He's making sure we get away safe, Adriano said finally. It was true enough. Marta appeared from the front passenger seat, tears streaming down her face.
Luca?
Baby. Mommy. The boy's composure finally broke. He lunged for her and they held each other, both sobbing. Adriano turned away to give them privacy, his own eyes burning. Through the window, he watched the mountain facility disappear into the darkness behind them. Petter drove with the intensity of a man on a mission. Police checkpoint ahead. 5 kilometers. Victor will have called them. What do we do? Camila asked via radio from the second van. Adriano thought quickly. Split up. Petter, take us west toward the Albanian border. Camila, you and Tony go south to the coast. Different routes, harder to track. The children need to be processed properly, Camila said. Return to their families through proper channels. I have contacts at the U.S. Embassy in Tirana, Adriano said. We'll get there, make the calls. These kids are going home. They drove through the night, taking back roads and logging trails that Petter knew by heart. Behind them, sirens wailed in the distance, but they were already too far ahead. As dawn broke over the Albanian border, both vans pulled into a safe house that Adriano's European contact had arranged. It was a farmhouse, isolated and secure. The children filed out, exhausted and scared but alive. Some cried. Others sat in shocked silence. Luca stayed pressed against Adriano's side, as if afraid his father might disappear. Adriano's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. He opened it. A photo appeared. Rocco, sitting against a tree, his shirt soaked with blood. He was smiling, actually smiling. The text below read, "Tell Luca his uncle Rocco loved him.
Tell him I'm sorry.
Tell him to be better than we were." Then another message. "Police are here." Victor's men ran. "I told them everything about the kidnappings, the murdered fathers, all of it. My testimony will put Victor away forever. The children are safe now. You made me remember what it means to choose right over easy. Thank you, brother." A final message appeared. Antonio would have liked Luca. They would have been good friends. Then silence. Adriano stared at the phone, emotions warring inside him. Relief,
Grief.
gratitude, anger. All of it at once, too much to process.
Daddy.
Luca tugged his hand. Are you crying? Adriano wiped his eyes. Yeah, buddy. I am. Is it because you're sad or happy? Both, he pulled his son close. Definitely both. As the sun rose higher, casting golden light across the Albanian countryside, Adriano made calls. To the embassy. To contacts who could help return the children safely. To lawyers who could handle the legal nightmare ahead. But first, he called Marta aside. We can't go back to our old life, he said quietly. Victor has connections everywhere. Even with Rocco's testimony, there will be retaliation. We need to disappear. Marta nodded. She'd already thought of this. Where? Somewhere quiet. Somewhere Luca can be just a kid. No empire.
No legacy.
Just a family. She took his hand. Can you really leave it all behind? The business, the power, everything you built. Adriano looked at Luca, who was helping comfort a younger boy, showing him the boat drawing he'd kept folded in his pocket. I already have everything I built, Adriano said. Right there. And I almost lost it forever. Marta squeezed his hand. Then let's go home. Wherever that is. 3 days later, Adriano stood at the Albanian-Greek border, watching as international authorities processed the children. Each boy was being reunited with family members who'd flown in from around the world: Brazil, Russia, Mexico, Japan. Tears, embraces, disbelief that their sons were actually alive. Camila had coordinated everything, working with Interpol and using Elena Novak's evidence to build an airtight case. Victor Novak was in custody, facing charges in 4 countries. Rocco had survived his wounds and was cooperating fully with authorities, his testimony dismantling the entire operation. But Adriano couldn't stay to see it through. Every day he remained visible was a day his enemies could find him. The documents are ready, said a thin man with wire-rimmed glasses. His name was Dimitri, and he specialized in making people disappear. Adriano had used his services before for witnesses, for associates who needed to vanish. Never for himself. Dimitri spread 3 passports on the table. Miguel Alvarez, he read. Age 7. Born in Valencia, Spain, he pointed to Luca's new photo. Isabella Alvarez, 36. Teacher, that was Marta. And Carlos Alvarez, 43. Architect. Adriano stared at the name. Carlos Alvarez. Not Valente. Never Valente again. Birth certificates, school records, employment history, everything backdated 5 years. As far as Spanish authorities are concerned, you've been living in Barcelona. Dimitri pulled out more documents. Bank accounts with enough to live comfortably, but not luxuriously. Rental agreement for an apartment in Alicante. You move in next week. And the old life?
Adriano asked.
Your underboss, what's his name, Carmine, he's taking over the Brooklyn operations. As far as anyone knows, you went into witness protection after Rocco's betrayal came to light. Your enemies will assume you're dead or untouchable. It was almost too easy. 23 years building an empire, and it could be erased with forged documents and a plane ticket. What about my assets? Adriano had properties, accounts, investments worth millions. Liquidated and transferred through 3 offshore banks before landing in your new accounts. It'll take years for anyone to trace, and by then, Carlos Alvarez will be established and invisible. Dimitri slid a phone across the table. New number. Encrypted. Camila has it and so do I. No one else. You don't call old associates. You don't reach out to anyone from before. You're dead, Mr. Valente. Stay that way. Adriano pocketed the phone. And Rocco. Last I heard, he's cooperating fully. They're offering him a reduced sentence in exchange for testimony against Victor's network. He'll probably serve 5 to 7 years. He deserves more. He deserves a lot of things. But he also saved those children and gave us Victor. The system's not perfect, Dimitri stood. Your flight to Valencia leaves in 4 hours. From there, you take a train to Alicante. Settle in. Enroll your son in school. Learn to be boring.
Boring, Adriano repeated.
The word felt foreign. It's harder than you think, Dmitri said with a knowing smile. Men like you're wired for conflict, for action. Suburban life will feel like prison at first. But if you love your family more than you love the rush, you'll survive it. After Dmitri left, Adriano found Marta and Luca in their hotel room. Marta was helping their son pack a small suitcase, new clothes, new toys, a fresh start. Miguel, Marta said, testing the name. Do you like it, sweetie?
Luca, Miguel, Siragd.
It's okay. But why can't I be Luca anymore? Adriano knelt beside him. Because some bad people might be looking for Luca Valente. But they won't be looking for Miguel Alvarez. This new name keeps you safe. Like a superhero's secret identity. Exactly like that. The boys seemed to accept this. At 7, the world still made sense if you framed it right. Can I still draw boats? Miguel asked. You can draw whatever you want. And will you teach me to fish? Like you promised? Adriano felt his throat tighten.
Yes.
I promise. We'll get a little boat, and I'll teach you everything I know. That night, they boarded a flight to Valencia. Adriano had flown private jets his entire adult life, surrounded by bodyguards and luxury. Now he sat in economy class between his ex-wife and son, eating peanuts from a foil packet, and felt richer than he ever had. The apartment in Alicante was modest, 2 bedrooms overlooking a quiet street, far from the tourist areas. The neighborhood was filled with retirees and young families. No one knew who Carlos Alvarez was. No one cared. Marta found work at a language school, teaching English. Adriano enrolled Miguel in a local primary school, watching nervously as his son disappeared into a building full of strangers. He'll be fine, Marta said, reading his thoughts. Children adapt. She was right. Within 2 weeks, Miguel was coming home with stories about new friends, about his teacher Senora Rodriguez, about learning Spanish words for things he already knew in English. Adriano struggled more. He'd wake at 3 a.m., instinctively reaching for a phone that didn't exist anymore, to check in with soldiers who weren't his to command. He'd see someone on the street who looked familiar, and his hand would move to where he used to carry a gun. Boring was harder than war. But slowly, incrementally, he adapted. He learned to make breakfast, scrambled eggs, and toast. Nothing fancy, but Miguel devoured it. He walked his son to school each morning, joined the other parents at the gate, made awkward small talk about weather and weekend plans. He rented a small fishing boat. Nothing like the yacht he'd once owned, just a humble vessel that puttered along the coast. On Sundays, he and Miguel would go out, just the two of them, and Adriano would teach his son to tie knots and bait hooks and read the water.
Dad,
Miguel asked one Sunday, as they drifted in calm waters. Are you happy? The question caught Adriano off guard. He looked at his son, hair sun-bleached, skin tanned, smiling in a way he hadn't smiled in that facility. Yes, Adriano said, and realized it was true. I really am. Me too. Miguel went back to his fishing line. I don't really remember Uncle Rocco, or the other place much anymore. Is that bad?
No, Budi.
That's healing. 3 months after they arrived, Marta knocked on Adriano's bedroom door. They maintained separate rooms, their relationship still undefined. Not quite divorced, not quite together, somewhere in between.
There's someone here to see you, she said.
Adriano's heart jumped. His hand instinctively reached for a weapon he no longer carried.
Who?
It's okay. It's Camila. She stood in their small living room, looking out of place in her professional clothes. But she smiled when she saw him. Nice place, she said.
Very.
Normal. That's the idea. What are you doing here? Delivering news. Victor Novak was sentenced to 30 years. Rocco got 7 with possibility of parole in 4. And all 12 children are back with their families. She pulled out her phone and showed him photos. The boys, now in their homes, smiling with parents and siblings. Adriano studied each image. They looked happy.
Whole.
There's something else, Camila said. The families, the ones whose children you saved, they wanted me to give you this. She handed him an envelope. Inside was a letter signed by 11 families, written in multiple languages, but translated to English. It thanked Carlos Alvarez for his bravery, for risking everything to save their children when their real fathers had been killed trying. At the bottom was a note in a child's handwriting. "Thank you for being brave when we were scared." From Miguel's friend, Paulo. Paulo, the 6-year-old Brazilian boy Adriano had carried through the tunnel. "They don't know who you really are," Camila said. "And they never will. But they wanted you to know you gave them their lives back." Adriano folded the letter carefully. "How's your daughter?" "Thriving. She starts university next year. Wants to be a social worker, help other trafficking survivors." Camila smiled. "She's stronger than I ever was." She learned from her mother. They talked for an hour, catching up, sharing stories. Before she left, Camila pulled out the USB drive Elena Novak had given them. "I made copies. Sent them to every major news organization and law enforcement agency. The whole operation is exposed. Victor's network is finished." She pressed the original drive into Adriano's hand. "But you should keep this as insurance, just in case." After she left, Adriano stood on his small balcony, watching the sun set over Alicante. Below, children played in the street. Ordinary children with ordinary lives. Miguel appeared beside him. "Was that your friend?"
Yes.
"A very good friend. Dad, will we stay here forever?" Adriano looked at his son. "Would you want to?" Miguel thought about it seriously.
Yeah.
"I like my school. And fishing. And Mama's happier here. She smiles more." "Then yes," Adriano said. "We'll stay here forever." "Promise." "I promise." That night, Adriano took out his old phone, the one with his previous life stored in it. Contacts, messages, photos of a world he'd left behind. He powered it on one last time, scrolled through everything, saying a silent goodbye. Then he removed the SIM card, broke it in half, and dropped both pieces into the trash. Adriano Valente was dead. Carlos Alvarez was home. 6 months later, Alicante had become more than a hiding place. It had become home. The coastal town of Villajoyosa, just south of the city, was where Carlos Alvarez had opened a small bakery. The storefront was modest, weathered blue shutters, a hand-painted sign that read "Pan y Dulces Alvarez," and the constant smell of fresh bread drifting into the street. It was Marta's idea. She'd always loved baking, back before the chaos of their old life consumed everything. Now, at 5 a.m. every morning, she kneaded dough while Adriano, Carlos, worked beside her, learning recipes he'd never had time for in his previous existence. "You're getting better," Marta said, inspecting his attempt at ensaimadas, the spiral pastries that were a local specialty. "Almost doesn't look like a disaster." "High praise from the master," he replied, flour dusting his forearms. They'd fallen into an easy rhythm, working side by side. The divorce papers had never been finalized, and somewhere in the quiet mornings and shared exhaustion of running a small business, they'd rediscovered something they'd lost years ago: companionship. Not romance, not yet. Maybe never. But partnership. Friendship. A foundation to build on. Miguel attended Colegio San Agustin, a small school 3 blocks away. He played soccer on weekends, had developed a thick Spanish accent, and came home each day with stories that had nothing to do with violence or fear.
Papa.
Miguel burst through the bakery's back door at 2 p.m., his school bag bouncing. "Senora Rodriguez said my essay about fishing was the best in class. And Javier invited me to his birthday party Saturday." "That's wonderful, Mijo," Marta said, kissing his forehead. "Go wash up and help your father with the afternoon deliveries." Miguel bounded upstairs to their small apartment above the bakery. Their lives had shrunk to these few rooms, this modest business, this quiet routine. Adriano had never felt freer. The deliveries were simple: bread and pastries to 3 local restaurants. Miguel insisted on helping, carrying the smaller packages with exaggerated seriousness. As they walked along the coastal road, the Mediterranean sparkling to their right, Miguel asked, "Papa, do you miss America?" The question caught Adriano off guard. "Sometimes."
Why?
"I heard you and Mama talking last night. You sounded sad." Adriano had been on the phone with Camila, getting updates on Rocco. His old friend had been moved to a minimum security facility, was reportedly taking correspondence courses, trying to educate himself, trying to become something better. "I wasn't sad," Adriano said carefully. "Just remembering old things. Old mistakes. Like when you were a king." Adriano stopped walking.
Who told you that?
"Nobody. I just remember some things." From before, Miguel looked up at him with those perceptive eyes. "You used to have lots of people working for you. Uncle Rocco was there. Everything was bigger and scarier. But you weren't happy."
No.
"I wasn't. Are you happy now?" The same question Miguel had asked on the fishing boat months ago. But this time, Adriano's answer came without hesitation.
Yes.
"Very much." "Good," Miguel adjusted his package. "Because I like this better. Even if the apartment is small and we don't have a big house anymore." "Me too, Mijo. Me too." They completed the deliveries and returned to the bakery as the afternoon crowd arrived. Locals buying bread for dinner, tourists sampling the sweets. Adriano worked the counter while Marta restocked shelves. At 5 p.m., a delivery truck pulled up outside. Not unusual, their flour supplier came twice weekly. But something made Adriano tense as the driver climbed out. The man was young, early 20s, with a nervous energy that set off alarms. He approached the counter with a small package. "Delivery for Carlos Alvarez." "I didn't order anything," Adriano said carefully. "It's prepaid. Just need your signature." Adriano signed, watching the driver hurry away. The package was light, wrapped in plain brown paper. No return address. Marta saw his expression. "What is it?" "I don't know. Take Miguel upstairs." "Carlos, please." She nodded and ushered their son away. Adriano waited until they were gone, then carefully opened the package. Inside was a single cupcake, vanilla with blue icing. No candle this time. And written on the icing in elegant white letters, "Thank you." Adriano's heart hammered. He turned the box over and found a small note tucked underneath. "Carlos, the boy you saved, all 12 of them, are thriving. You gave them their lives back. You gave us hope. This is from Paulo's mother in Sao Paulo. She wanted you to know her son talks about the brave man who carried him to safety. He wants to be like you when he grows up.
Brave. Good.
A protector. You may have left your old life behind, but you took the best parts with you. Stay safe, my friend.
See.
Camila, always watching over them." Adriano stared at the cupcake, remembering another one 6 months ago. The one that had started everything. The one with Luca's name that had shattered his world and rebuilt it.
Papa.
Miguel's voice came from the stairs. "Is everything okay?" Adriano quickly wrapped the cupcake back up.
Yes.
"Everything's fine." What was in the package?
A gift.
From a friend. That evening, they closed the bakery and walked to their favorite spot, a small beach just outside town. Miguel ran ahead, chasing waves while Marta and Adriano sat on the sand. "I saw the cupcake," Marta said quietly. "Someone knows where we are." "Just Camila. Making sure we're okay." "And are we?" "Okay." Adriano watched Miguel splash in the surf, his laughter carrying on the wind. "Better than okay. We're home." Marta leaned her head on his shoulder. "I never thought I'd say this, but I'm glad it happened. Not the kidnapping, not the pain, but everything after. The choice you made. Leaving that life behind. I should have made it years ago. Maybe. But you made it when it mattered most." She took his hand. "Miguel told me you promised to buy him a real boat. Are you actually going to do it?" "Already saving up. Small one. Nothing fancy. Just big enough for the 2 of us." "3 of us," Marta corrected. "I want to learn too."
Adriano smiled.
"3 of us, then." They sat in comfortable silence as the sun descended toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. Miguel ran back to them, soaking wet and grinning. "Papa, Mama, look what I found." He held up a smooth piece of sea glass, green and weathered. "It's like a treasure." "Beautiful," Marta said. "You should start a collection." "I will. I'll find one for each of us. Green for me, blue for Mama," and he searched the sand. "Red for Papa." As Miguel hunted for more sea glass, Adriano thought about the 12 boys scattered across the world. About Rocco in his cell, trying to atone. About Victor Novak rotting in prison. About 9 fathers who'd never had this moment. And he thought about Antonio, Rocco's son, who'd never gotten to grow up. Who'd been stolen by the same violence that had nearly taken Luca. "I don't need an empire," Adriano murmured, echoing words he'd spoken months ago. "I just needed a son." "What was that?" Marta asked. "Nothing. Just remembering something." Miguel ran back with 3 pieces of sea glass, green, blue, and red.
"Look.
I found them all." He pressed one into each parent's hand. Adriano held the red glass up to the fading sunlight, watching it glow like a tiny ember.
"Perfect," he said.
Absolutely perfect. As darkness fell and stars emerged overhead, the Alvarez family walked back toward town. Toward their small apartment above the bakery. Toward Miguel's homework and Marta's evening tea, and Adriano's quiet contentment. Behind them, the Mediterranean whispered against the shore, eternal and indifferent. The waves would come and go. The tides would rise and fall. And somewhere in a coastal town in Spain, a former mafia boss would wake at dawn to bake bread. He would help his son with math homework. He would hold his ex-wife's hand during evening walks.
He would be ordinary.
And he would be grateful for it every single day. Across the street, unnoticed in the gathering darkness, Camila sat in a rented car. She watched the family disappear into their building, watched the lights flicker on in the second-floor windows. She pulled out her phone and sent a text to a secure number. All clear. Family safe and thriving. Closing this case file. The response came immediately. Good work. They deserve their peace. Camila started her engine and drove away, leaving the Alvarez family to their quiet, beautiful, ordinary life. Because sometimes the greatest victory isn't ruling an empire. It's walking away from one. And choosing love over power, family over legacy, and life over legend. Adriano Valente had learned that lesson the hardest way possible. But Carlos Alvarez would never forget it. The end.